Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to this, our third episode of 3B TV. And on this episode, I want to talk to you about having an annual planning meeting for your farm or homestead. As I said in our last video, we've been doing this now for 9 years. We've been on this piece of property for 9 years, doing kind of a homestead-esque lifestyle, a lot of homesteady type things, but no real plan or direction. And so in 2018, that's the number one thing that's going to change, trying to have more of a plan towards being more self-sufficient in our lifestyle and just being a little bit more proactive instead of reactive in how we approach things. Tonight we sat down and we had our first annual planning meeting and took some of my own advice from our first video with regards to our homesteading philosophy and talked a little bit about that, and then talked through some of our ideas, our goals, our dreams, and things that we want to accomplish in 2018. I had great intentions of videotaping our process and sharing it with you, and then talking to you a little bit about the process that we used. But rookie mistake by me, I set up the camera, caught all the video and none of the audio. Now I look good, I know, but I don't think you just want to stare at me while I just do that. So I'm now reshooting this, so I will share with you a little bit about kind of some of the things that we talked about and worked through. So first of all, taking my own advice, talked a little bit as a family about our philosophy and our direction as far as where we want to see this farmstead go. And talked about some of the things that are important to us, whether or not it was important to us that we do everything organic and non-GMO, or whether or not that mattered to us. We talked a little bit about some of the animals that we may or may not want to introduce into our farm, and whether or not we want to do this, develop this to become a full-time thing or not. And so once we got done with that, then we started doing some brainstorming. And I think that it's important that when you are doing this, if this is your first ever meeting and you've never thought through your homestead philosophy, I think that it's important that you wrestle with that and kind of talk through that a little bit, just because that is going to feed your direction. Then I think it's important that you just brainstorm, throw out some ideas, big ideas, small ideas, things that you'd like to do, things that you don't want to do. And I think it's important that everybody has a voice, from the oldest to the youngest. My son is 13, and we allowed him to provide feedback and his thoughts, things that he would like to see, things that he would like to do, things that he would like to try, and also to provide input on things that he didn't want to try or he didn't think would be a good fit for us. My wife had the same input. I had the same input. Nobody's ideas are more important, I wouldn't say, than anybody else's. It's important that this be a team effort and that you're working towards a common goal. Once you've done that, you've kind of gone through, and I jotted down a bunch of ideas, the big ideas that we came up with. Once you do that, then I think it's important that you go through and you start identifying the ones that maybe are a big idea from the standpoint of it's going to take a lot of capital, or it's going to, from a financial or a time perspective, that it has big implications as far as how you live your life. Maybe it's going to change your lifestyle, and start identifying those. Look at the things that are important, that are kind of must-haves for this year, and identify maybe things that can be put off until the next year. Some things are fun to try. You may just want to go ahead and give them a whirl. Other things are things that maybe you don't want to try. And so I'll talk through some of the things that we came up with. And then once you're done with that, you've kind of gone through, you've identified your big ideas, you've kind of taken a look at, okay, what are the ones that are going to require a lot of capital? What are the ones that need to be done this year? Then start kind of jotting down notes. Okay, are we going to try to attempt this in 2018? Or are we not going to try to attempt it this year? We're going to put it out in 2019, 2020, on down the road. I've got all kinds of notes all over this as we talked through it. Some of the things that we came up with were big things. We identified that we're really at a spot where our infrastructure isn't supporting what we're doing. We need to build either a barn or a shed or something where we can store feed, we can store hay, or move stuff that's currently in the shed where we're using to store hay, move that out of there, put it in the barn, and then have more room to store hay and to store feed. A tractor, that's a big expense, and a lot that goes into that, and we really feel like we're at a spot now where our current tractor, which is a 1953 Cub, which I love, but it just doesn't have the oomph and it doesn't have the flexibility I think that we need on our Homestead. And so looked at, okay, talked about, yeah, we want to address that. We talked about expanding our gardens, but if we're going to expand our garden, we need to plan our garden better. We need to be mindful of when things are going to be ready to harvest, and then be prepared to harvest those things and either consume them or preserve them. And also to make sure that when we're planning our garden, that we're planting things that we are going to want to eat. In fact, as we kind of wound the meeting down, the seed catalogs are starting to arrive, and it's kind of the homework I gave everybody is to start looking at them and start thinking about what are the things that you want to eat, what are the things you want to try, and what are some things that maybe we've done in the past that we're saying, hey, don't want to waste garden space on that. We talked about adding meat birds this year, and that's something that we're going to try. In the past, we've always cycled our flock out every year and eaten our layers. Because of some predator problems, we had to hold our layers over for 2 years this year, and it put us in a position where they're just not a fryer. But we've also found that with the standard breeds, once we've kept them for a year, I like them to roast them and have them that way, but my son isn't as big of a fan. Depending on how they're cooked, he'll eat them, but they can be a little bit tough, a little bit more chewy. And so we're going to try doing some Cornish crosses. Never done them before, and so this year in the spring, 25 Cornish crosses. We're going to put those into play and see how that works for us. Some of those are kind of big things, but we had some smaller things like, let's plant some raspberry bushes. Let's plant a grapevine. Let's look at doing the water situation in the winter better. None of those are things that are going to be extremely cost prohibitive. A little bit of time, but I think those are doable goals for 2018. Some of the other things that we talked about were things that we're pushing off to the future. I want to build an outdoor kitchen for canning and for us to process our animals, our rabbits and our chickens and so on and so forth, to keep the mess outside. But that's something that we're going to table, push off to a future date. Building a greenhouse. There's part of me that would love to jump on that for 2018, probably going to wait and do that in 2019. Maybe do a little better rabbitry. Right now it's in a hoop coop. Maybe make a little bit more permanent, a little better setup for the rabbits, but we're saying, okay, we're going to look at that, pushing that down the road. There were some other things that we talked about. Cows, beef cows. If we're going to do that, that's going to require us to acquire a little bit more land, which may be a possibility, but definitely not something that will, I mean, even if we were able to acquire the land in 2018, we wouldn't be able to do that to add the beef cows. Talked about potentially adding a dairy cow, realizing that that's something that would require a huge commitment from a lifestyle perspective for us. And so not sure if that's something that we want to add, but that was something that was thrown out there. So that's something that we are going to at least think about in the future. So again, some of these things were big things, some of them were little things, and some of them kind of, the dots get connected. If you were to divorce one from the other and not go through the planning process that we've gone through, you might end up spending a lot of money on something and then later realize, well, if I would have done X before I did Y, I would have been able to save myself a lot of money. So for example, one of the things that we want to do is we want to run electricity out to our chicken coop. Well, if we're going to build the barn where I think we're going to build it, and I'm calling it a barn, it's probably more of a big shed, but if we're going to build it where I think we're going to build it, then it would make sense for us to run the electricity to the coop and then from the coop to the barn. So it's going to save me some money, it's going to save me some work from the standpoint of digging, whereas if I were just to go out and to run electricity to the coop, then build the barn in the spring or in the summer and then run electricity to that, well, I've duplicated my work, my effort, and didn't really need to. So the importance of planning and looking at this and saying, okay, are there any dots that I can connect here? So again, thinking about connecting the dots, sometimes you have some dots connected and then plans change. So for example, originally I had thought about putting the barn closer to the house. And when I did that, then I would be able to build off of the back side of the barn, the outdoor kitchen. But as we talked through where we wanted to put the barn, we kind of all agreed that we might want to put the barn in a different spot. Well, that all of a sudden changes my plans with regards to the outdoor kitchen, which is part of the reason why now the outdoor kitchen has kind of gotten pushed off into the future. So again, this planning meeting for us was very beneficial because I think that it's helping us connect some of the dots and will help us get to a spot that hopefully at the end of 2018 was a little bit more strategic, a little bit better focused than if we would have just gone out there like we've done in the past and kind of been the fly by the seat of the pants ranch. Done with that in 2018. No more. Done. All right. Last thing, have fun with it. My son, Brian Jr., afterwards he said, that was a lot more fun than I thought it would be. We talked for about 2 hours, and he said, it went by so fast and it was a lot more fun than I thought it would be. Have fun with it. Make sure that this isn't something that's a drudgery, but that there's value in it and that it's enjoyable, that it's a good process, and hopefully it will be something that will be very beneficial to you. I think already I can see some benefits to it, and we haven't even gotten started with actually implementing any of our big ideas, which I am so excited about here in 2018. Some great things coming here on 3B Farm and Homestead, the 3B Farmstead in beautiful upstate New York. One of the last things, I just wanted to share with you some of the reading material I've been going through lately, some of the stuff that I've got queued up to read, and all of this I think will help inform and kind of shape our direction. I've got some other great stuff here, and I actually got some books over there that I didn't even bring that have been really, really great. And so we'll be implementing some of the ideas from those. And you know, this time of the year, not a whole lot going on here on the farm. Brutal cold, it's been down below zero. But it's a great time to just kind of dream, think, plan, and get ready for the spring and some of these wonderful ideas that we have that I am so totally excited about. Probably the one that I'm the most excited about is trying meat birds. Actual real meat birds, not doing a standard breed and use it as a meat bird. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and we've had some success in it. It's just that we found that to be very, very expensive if I raise them strictly for meat, and it's just not been palatable. Is that a palatable? I think that's how you say it. To my son in particular, and so we're going to try out some Cornish crosses and see what we get. Very, very excited about that, and also excited to look at potentially building this barn and really trying to get things a little better organized. One of the things that we're just finding is we're running out of places to put stuff, things that are necessary for our homestead, and they're just getting stacked everywhere. And man, my garage, I'd like to have as a garage again. So, all right, thanks so much for tuning in. Brian here, 3B Farm, upstate New York. Homestead 101, have an annual planning meeting, and I think you'll find it very beneficial. We did, And so I hope it works for you. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is our farmstead story, and I'm sticking to it. Goodbye, everybody.